All right, we are now going to start on the employee class. So I have in just kind of a basic start to this. We will need the destructor on this. I am going to implement it inline, so I'm going to get rid of this extra code down here below that it created for me. And I do have some libraries. I think I failed to put a couple of these libraries into the date and the address class, but you'll definitely be needing, like IOStream, so don't forget those. Also, by default, this particular editor puts in this if and define. This you want to have if you prefer to do the other style where you just say, oh my gosh, what is it? How come I just had a brain fart on that? Pragma once. You can do the Pragma once instead of this code. Or you could have this code in and not have the Pragma once, but keep it consistent throughout your code if you want to use the Pragma once or if you want to use the if and define. They both do the same exact things of trying to prevent your code from being included more than one time in a program. Okay, so now we're on the employee class. We're going to need the name and then a year, month, and day for and that's going to be their start date of when they became an employee. Notice they don't have to have an address, so we don't have that in there because address is going to be a pointer, right? So that's okay. So here in our employee class, we're going to say string name. That means they need the name. Excuse me, let's put the variables in first. Getting ahead of myself. They need a string, string name. And we said address was going to be a pointer. And then they do have to have some sort of start date. There we go. Those are our private variables. Notice we got our aggregation and composition types of things where we're using the address and date inside the employee class. All right, name. We're going back to our name. We have to have a name, then we have to have int year, int month, and int day. And then in this constructor, this is why it's, well, not yet, we'll get to that in a sec, but we do want to define the name. So I'm going to say name and send it the variable name, right? Now, the thing about it is we don't want to define year, month, and day because we don't have a year, month, or day here. We only have a start date. So up here, we're going to say start date, and then I'm going to send it. Let's get this over so you can kind of see a little better. Move into our picture. Start date takes the parameters. Where's date? I don't remember where date is. Date, year, month, and day, right? So here, start date takes parameters of year, month, and day. And then we do want to specify that we are actually implementing that. Nice. Okay, so that is done. Let's go back and grab our cute little friend operator because it's going to be very similar. So I'm just going to grab this line of code from either the date or the, what's the other one we had? Date or address. And just change out whatever type it is to employee. And then we'll copy that again. That was paste. I wanted copy. I don't want the keyword friend, right? Okay, so on this, am I forgetting my return statements on these guys? I am. Look at that. See that operator's missing a return statement? We got to return out both on date and on address. That way that display actually gets back to the employee. So just so I don't forget here, I'm going to say return out because that's what I'm calling it. Okay, now on this I want to display their name, their address, and their date. All right, so I'm going to actually create a string method here that we can do that. That way we can reuse our string method over and over again. Plus, I want to show you what virtual does. Here, because you cannot make a friend operator virtual, but I can make a method virtual. So I'm going to say string. Maybe I'll just call it str, right? And let's implement that down here. That's going to be be a little bigger. It is going to be virtual. And the reason why is I want it to update based upon what information I am. If I am an employee, I want to display the employee information. If I'm a waged employee, I want to display the waged employee information. So employee, this is our str method. And that's why I have this stream library in, so I can convert all of this information to be a string. So what is it, a string stream? Is that what converts it? String stream, I'll just call it SS. And then we'll want to display their name, and then maybe an inline. Then I'll want to display their start date. What did I call it, start date? I think there's an inline in there. Now I want to display their address, but what if their address doesn't exist? So, because we haven't ever created that yet. So I'll do an if statement here that says if their address actually exists, ADDRESS, how come it's not letting me spell ADDRESS? If their address actually exists, then I'll dereference it because it's a pointer and display that. So it's displaying their name, their start date, and their address if it exists. Now all I have to do here is, oh, now I have to return my string. So that converts your string stream into a string. It's also the same name as the class that we used here, but that's okay. Out me.str, and that will display all that information. So now, since I'm using a string, and since this is a virtual function, that means on any of the other classes that inherit this, I don't have to create another one of these operators. All I have to do is create a function called str that overwrites this and adds all the new stuff in, and it will automatically call the correct one based upon what it is instantiated as. Okay, I think I have some more stuff to do. We need to be able to set the address for an employee because currently that is not there, right? So here I am going to do another function in here. So let's go void set address. That's going to take a string string street and a string city, and let's implement that down here. Do some copying and pasting here. Oops, got an extra bracket. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm instantiating my pointer here. So, and I'm spelling employee incorrectly as well. So don't spell employee incorrectly like I did. There you go. So in order to do that, I'm just going to say address equals new, because it's the new keyword that instantiates a pointer. And now I'm instantiating it with the street and the city. There we go. That is done. Okay, this class is not done though, but because I'm using that new keyword, I have to deallocate that memory. So I do have to have this destructor. Did I get rid of that? I did get rid of it. I shouldn't have. Do I want that? I'm going to put that down below because that's going to be employee, colon, this is my destructor. Okay, so the code that I want is delete address. But what happens if the address doesn't exist? Then I'm going to have some sort of crash in my program because it will say, you're deleting something that doesn't exist, so you can't delete it. So I'm going to stick that delete statement into an if statement, saying if the address exists, then delete it. If the address doesn't exist, then don't worry about deleting it. All right. And that there is the employee class. So hold on for the next video and we will go through the waged employee class.